Our next witness is a confessing witness. A confessing witness is one who is, let me just frankly say, a person who is from a white background, who's recognized the significance of the racialization of our system and has decided to do something with their life to change that around. Mayor Jennifer Roberts is one whose testimony will highlight the patterns of race-based oppression that have fostered disparities from the perspective of one who has not suffered from the harms of environmental racism and injustice. We're joined by my partner in good trouble, the Mayor Jennifer Roberts, who helped found this wonderful organization, the Reimagining America Project. And she's going to tell her own story of recognizing the racial injustice and environmental degradation and pollution in our community. Mayor Roberts, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Rodney, and thanks so much to all the storytellers tonight. My heart is full, and I really wanted to be the confessing witness for this subject because I have done so much work on climate change and on the environment, and the justice issue is very real. I confess I grew up in Southeast Charlotte, beautiful tree-lined neighborhood. Healthy air, access to playgrounds. I fell in love with our environment through going on camping trips with the Girl Scouts, through hiking, and never once did I think, wow, there aren't people of color on these hiking trails. Never once did I think, wow, I'm so privileged I don't have to worry about my safety on these hiking trails. Until about 10 years ago, an African-American friend of me told me that he didn't want to go hiking in the woods because he was afraid of the rural white supremacist racist folks who live in our rural areas in North Carolina. He was afraid, and there have been tales of friends of his who had been heckled and threatened for hiking. Thank goodness now when I go to Crowder's Mountain, I see many Black families and Latino families and people from all over hiking there, but it wasn't that way growing up, and I didn't notice. I didn't notice that there were not people of color at the Sierra Club meetings or other environmental organizations I was a part of. I didn't notice they were run by all white people. I didn't think about the fact that some of my colleagues, my friends in high school, when we had integrated schools, were not living in healthy tree-lined neighborhoods, that they had people with asthma in their families. They lived near the highways. I didn't think about the fact, in fact, today I looked at a map of Mecklenburg County. Where are the landfills? There aren't any in the Wedge in Southeast Charlotte. There is one in Ballantyne, and I remember when I was a county commissioner, it's called the Foxhole. It's just for construction debris. No nasty polluting toxins, no nasty garbage, just wood, concrete, things left over from construction. When we expanded that, all the white people showed up. Like Deja was saying, people with resources, people with means, people who knew how to contact their county commissioners, who knew how government worked, who had the resources, the time, the childcare, etc., to show up for public meetings time and time again. That doesn't happen in Black and brown communities. And it didn't occur to me, I didn't think about the fact that across our state, when you look at the communities near coal ash ponds, near wood pellet, those dirty operations, near hog waste lagoons, if you look at a map and you look at where are the Black and brown communities, all of those facilities are sited right in those communities. Also, before the Clean Water Act, here in Mecklenburg County, companies were dumping toxins straight into our streams and rivers. Little Sugar Creek was a sewer. And during that time of Jim Crow, Black children did not have access to white swimming pools. So where were they playing? In those sewage-filled creeks and streams. I was here in Charlotte. I didn't think about that. I knew that Little Sugar Creek stank. I remember that. But I didn't think about the fact that Black children didn't have access to the white swimming pools. I also didn't think about the health impacts. And when I became a county commissioner, one of the things that we were charged with is public health. If you look now at a CDC map of where are the chronic illnesses in Mecklenburg County, where is the asthma, where is COPD, diabetes, stroke, cancer, where are those the highest? It's in the Crescent. It's in the Crescent. I remember talking about, because I knew what environmental justice was when I was a county commissioner, and I remember talking about greenway expansion, and we want to make sure we're putting greenways in low-income communities because they're transportation, because they're healthy, they have trees, they clear the air and the water. And I remember a state legislator asking me, what's environmental justice? It was a white person. They had no idea. And continue to make policy without taking that into consideration. So I know that our policies of racialization of our environmental health and of the development and building of our communities has had direct impact on health and on wealth accumulation. So if you are forced to live through redlining in those neighborhoods that have landfills and toxins near them, you don't get the household appreciation. You don't get to pass down wealth to your children. There are over, I just read, 3.2 million owner-occupied homes in Black majority neighborhoods across America that have been collectively devalued by $156 billion. This is an ultimate systemic failure. How are we going to have equal opportunity if we don't have any wealth accumulation? I also discovered that until recently, our federal government was denying repair money for Black homeowners who had been flooded out because FEMA was not recognizing heirs property. And so one of the customs in the South, especially in Black families, was to pass down deeds through informal means to try to protect it through what they called heirs property, heirs rights. It was collective ownership. Well, FEMA didn't recognize that. Thank goodness. There was a story this summer in the Washington Post that pointed this out. I just read that in September, FEMA started recognizing, so they can actually give money to help those Black homeowners repair the homes that have been damaged by climate change, by the increasing floods that we're going to continue to see as we get more and more extreme weather. And that goes for urban heat. Our Black and brown neighborhoods were not invested with beautiful tree-lined medians in the middle, like some parts of Charlotte. Habitat homes have not always had trees. The green cover, the park access, so the urban heat is getting worse. And recently, looking at the 2040 Vision Plan, there was nothing in there about urban heat, nothing in there about mitigating or prioritizing the disinvested areas of our community. We also know that it's so interesting that Deja talked about Warren County. My ancestors, the Watsons, lived in Warren County, and that's where environmental justice movement started. So I love Deja's call to action. I love that we are raising awareness tonight, that more people who look like me, more white people who grew up with the privilege of not worrying about the health of our children and whether they're going to have a chronic illness and whether they were going to survive to adulthood. I never once worried about that. But many of my friends did. The more of us who realize that, the more of us who draw hope from Lawrence's story of people like John Crosland recognizing that we have to restore the soil, we have to restore the land, we have to repair and rebuild in ways that are just. This gives me hope. And I want to close, there's so much more I could mention, but I want to close by saying this is very personal to me. And I got an inheritance from my father, from land that he owned, that he loved. It was farmland. The land is so important, that connection to the land that too many minorities and Black and brown communities have not had the luxury of having. So my husband and I have donated all that money to UNC for what is called the Roberts Watson Family Environmental Scholars Program. And we are going to fund 2 students every year, students of color, to have them study environmental sciences. And it's a new department of Earth, Marine, and Environmental Sciences. And I would just encourage anyone listening to think about ways that you, if you are a white person of privilege, that you can also do something to help us improve the environment that gives health, that gives mental health, physical health, that gives us food, that gives us clean water, to restore that access to those Black, Indigenous, people of color communities that for so long, through our policies, were denied it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jennifer. And I'm supposed to turn it over now to the Reverend Greg Jarrell, but before I do so, I do want to ask you one question. And that might be, what was the source of your cognition, your recognition that you were a white person with privilege? And what helped you to see what so many other people don't see, and got you to be involved in working to change it?
You know, I think I continue to learn. It's been a gradual awakening and a gradual awareness. But when I started hearing friends of mine who were African American talk about how different their lives had been, talk about how different their health had been, when I went to high school graduations as a commissioner for different high schools, and I saw a physical difference in the health of students who are in primarily Black and brown schools, because we have resegregated, unfortunately, how much less healthy they were than the white students in some of our southern high schools who are much healthier. When you can physically see it, when I opened doors campaigning in West Charlotte, in the western side of our city, and I opened the door and I realized this family can't afford air conditioning. They're energy burdened. And this is hurting their health. Too much heat, children learn less, there's more aggression. So the gradual awareness, being in public service, being exposed, listening to people's stories like we're doing tonight.
Well, I thank you for that, Mayor Roberts. I want to call you Reverend Roberts. Reverend Jarrell, I turn this over to you, my brother.
Good evening, folks. Reverend Greg Jarrell. Jennifer, to you, briefly, I just want to say thank you for the words that you have offered, for the courage to acknowledge your own shortcomings, your own short-sightedness, and the willingness to offer us a glimpse of how you've come to see things differently. A process that, especially for those of us who have been called white, is a long and ongoing process of waking up to the world around us. To the rest of our witnesses this evening, Daisha, Ebony, Nikisha, Lawrence, and Sheldon, and also to you, Jennifer, I want to thank you for the way that you have helped us to get a clear vision of the nature of environmental racism and the way that it is contextualized within our city, so that this is not a big and abstract problem, but it is a real problem that affects our community institutions, that affects families and neighbors within our city. I want to thank you for your commitment to sticking with this work and in the various ways that you're doing it. Certainly, it can be discouraging and disappointing at times and requires much persistence, and so I'm grateful for that. I also want to thank you for your imagination. Our work here together in the Reimagining America project is first and foremost to stop having our imaginations held captive by the empire. And so for your insistence that we can reimagine the way that our world has been constructed and that we can live better together as kindred with one another, I am grateful for that. So I leave here a little hopeful and grateful to have served along with you all tonight and for where we're headed.